October 1st is the feast of Saint Therese of Lisieux, known as the Little Flower, who did great things for Jesus. It was her desire to do such great things as be a missionary in a foreign land or to be a martyr for the faith. But God taught her that she was being asked to do little things with great love. And this was considered the little way. That's what Christian greatness is, to do little things with great love. 4 weeks ago, the church canonized Mother Teresa of Calcutta, so she can now be called Saint Teresa of Calcutta. When she was born, her given name was Agnes. But when she joined the religious order and was getting ready to make her first profession of vows, she was so inspired by the life of the Little Flower, St. Therese of Lisieux, that she asked if that could be her religious name. So they gave her the name Teresa. And in 1946, 15 years later, God called her to leave that religious order, to establish a new order, to work among the poorest of the poor. And throughout her life, from time to time, she was criticized for not working with the corporate world and politicians to really fix some of the systemic problems that give rise to hunger. And while she knew that was necessary, she felt like God was calling her to simply live among the poorest of the poor and take care of one at a time, one individual at a time, from moment to moment. And in that way, she made a profound difference in an individual in a given moment. And for some of those individuals, it was momentous for a lifetime, but certainly, as we know, she made a great difference in the world, even to the point in 1979 receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. And it was her wish that the banquet be canceled, so they awarded her the Peace Prize, and they canceled the banquet, and they gave her the check of what it would have cost to throw this banquet, so that she could take care of the poor. In 1992, the Knights of Columbus gave her their most prestigious award in the inaugural year, called Gaudium et Spes, Joy and Hope. And Mother Teresa accepted this award, which was gold, a medallion, and a $100,000 stipend. And as soon as the award was over and the state dinner was going to begin, she left. And they knew this because it was part of her commitment to live as the poorest of the poor, and they would have never been invited to this kind of banquet. So the Supreme Knight escorted her to a car. And she said, "I hope you don't mind, but I plan to melt down this metal and make wedding bands out of them to give them to the orphan girls." And the Supreme Knight said, "Oh, well, the Knights of Columbus would be happy to create and purchase wedding bands." And she said, "No, because then that would be your gift to them. By melting down this metal, I am giving them a part of myself." The priest who was responsible for guiding her canonization process, Father Brian Kolodziejczak, wrote a book that was recently published, and it was highlighted in Columbia Magazine that the Knights of Columbus put out. And the book is named A Call to Mercy, Hearts to Love, Hands to Serve. And he focuses on the works of mercy, both corporal and spiritual works of mercy. And when he was talking about the call to feed the hungry, he talked about a variety of these kinds of stories and how she fed started opening homes in the Western Hemisphere, rather than just in India, she began to notice and speak more and more about a different kind of hunger. And it was the hunger for love, for human love, for human attention. And so she said, in the Western world, you have this poverty. Maybe not so much the poverty that means you're hungry for bread, but a hunger for love. And then she began talking even more about how both in rich countries and in poor, regardless of class, regardless of religion, this world, every heart has a hunger for God. And she began talking more and more about this. Now, she was holy all these decades, doing little things with great love. But she had this deepening awareness of the different kinds of poverty, the different kinds of hunger in the world. In 1982, she was giving the commencement address at Harvard, and she explained that the poorest of the poor were not in the slums of India. She said they were our own neighbors, right here in America, and we can give them attention. And as she started naming the different poverties that exist in America, and she called abortion one of the greatest poverties. She said this: a nation, people, family that allows that accepts that, they are the poorest of the poor. That was 1982. 3 years later, 1979, earlier, when she received the Nobel Peace Prize, she said this in her address: to me, the nations who have legalized abortion are the poorest nations. They are afraid of the little one. They are afraid of the unborn child. And the child must die because they don't want to feed one more child, to educate one more child. Now, on the issue of abortion, Mother Teresa was never neutral on this, but in her growing awareness of poverty, she had this growing awareness of and concern about abortion and how this was part of the concern we need to have for the poor and the marginalized. Tomorrow is Respect Life Sunday. When we think of the respect for life, a lot of times we tend to think of the unborn and the issue of abortion. And so often we can forget that respecting life includes so many other issues, like offering children the best education possible, including in urban areas, helping war refugees, helping people who are experiencing famine, how we treat the foreigner, whether we welcome the immigrant, how we offer opportunities for the poor to rise above the line of poverty, making the best availability of medical science, especially to the elderly, whether we should be going to war or not, when we're in war, how do we act, and how do we treat people in prison? Is it ever really necessary to kill people in prison? Capital punishment? It has to do with issues such as human cloning and euthanasia. All of these things fall under the topic, respecting life. What I find is that some of us begin with a heart for the poor, such as recently in the newspaper here in La Crosse, there's a wonderful initiative underway to eradicate homelessness in our community. And how beautiful if someone's heart is on that subject, and then sort of like Mother Teresa's understanding broadens, if the person broadens and says, you know what, we also have to be concerned of the unborn, and that they would have a home in this world. And vice versa, for people who have a particular heart for the unborn and for the end of abortion, to realize that life outside the womb is just as important as life in the womb. Respect for life. We must be a people who have hearts that are open. We must address all forms of poverty in our world. And we must be willing to do it in the little ways as well as in the grand ways, and to always do it with love.